My name's Tom Fitzgerald, and this presentation is about muscle growth and resistance training in young males aged between 18 and 30. I'll be looking at the physiological changes as well as the techniques used to achieve these changes, positives and negatives of resistance training. First of all, it's important to know the difference between an eccentric and a concentric muscle contraction. An eccentric muscle contraction involves the muscle lengthening whilst under tension, whereas a concentric muscle contraction involves the muscle shortening while under resistance. Now, an eccentric muscle contraction is particularly important for the growth and hypertrophy of muscle, whereas concentric muscle contractions are important for strength and dynamic movement. It's important to know that the eccentric muscle contraction is stronger than a concentric muscle contraction, and this means that during a gym movement or resistance exercise movement where both the eccentric and concentric muscle actions are occurring, the weakness or the relative weakness of the concentric muscle contraction is going to be a limitation for the eccentric muscle. Hypertrophy is the process of muscle fiber enlargement and occurs in type 1, type 2A and type 2X muscle fibers. This process is stimulated by damage caused to the muscle fibers primarily from eccentric contractions, but to some degree through concentric contractions as well. Now, micro tears occur in the muscle fibers, and this produces an inflammatory response within the muscle cell, which brings macrophages and neutrophils into the muscle and degrades damaged proteins. The inflammatory response also brings satellite cells to the damaged muscle fibers to take their place. Satellite cells have the ability to become any type of cell in the body, and once they're brought into the muscle and committed to becoming a muscular cell, they'll take the place of the old fibers and lay down a new matrix which is slightly larger and slightly stronger than the previous muscle. This process of building new muscle is known as muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis is stimulated by both resistance training and also by the diet. Resistance training provides the damage and the need to rebuild the new muscle, and the diet provides the building blocks via amino acids to repair that new muscle. By having a diet that contains sufficient protein, the blood will go into a state called hyperaminoacidemia, and this means that there's excess amino acids within the bloodstream which are available for use for muscle protein synthesis. Testosterone is very important for muscle protein synthesis because it increases the amount of amino acids uptake from the bloodstream placed into the muscle for protein synthesis. Now, testosterone levels increase post-workout, which means it's very important to have sufficient amino acids in the bloodstream at that time to maximize muscle protein synthesis. Now, the techniques for developing muscle and building new muscle need to take advantage of the physiological techniques that I've just mentioned. So, young males will normally train 4 to 5 days per week in the gym using heavy weights, training between 8 and 12 reps per set, using compound exercises and then moving into isolation exercises towards the end of a session. The majority of exercises will be concentric movements because they stimulate both strength gains and muscle growth, whereas eccentric movements will be used sparingly as they only induce muscle growth and they cause a lot of pain and relate to DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. A good diet is very important for ensuring that there's adequate nutrients available for muscle growth and muscle development. You need to have a positive energy balance, which means you expend less calories than you intake for the day. And you also got to have the right amount of each macronutrient, that being carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It's very important you have sufficient protein through the day, so you've got the amino acids to build the new muscle, and in particular that in that post-workout meal, when you have that anabolic window where the testosterone is allowing more amino acid uptake from the blood. So you've got to have those amino acids from the diet going through the stomach into the blood, so they are available for creating that new muscle. Aside from that, it's also important to have enough carbohydrate for energy. You want to avoid any glycogen depletion and make sure you've got sufficient carbohydrates for energy during a workout and for the rest of your daily activities. Unsaturated fats are also a very good way to increase the amount of calories taken in for a day because they are very energy-dense nutrients and they can help provide that positive energy balance that is required to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So negatives associated with muscle development and resistance training as well. Muscle dysmorphia has recently become a very popular topic. Muscle dysmorphia is basically an obsession with muscle development in young males in particular. So young males think that their muscles are inadequate and they feel the need to overtrain in an attempt to build these muscles up. And they also will often withdraw from social interaction, and it can often lead to depression as well because they withdraw from that social side of things and they also feel as if they're inadequate too. It can also lead to overtraining and serious muscle damage from chronic chronic use. Young males can also be exposed to and potentially use steroids or other performance enhancing drugs that are banned and that are illegal. Steroids can accelerate growth and provide performance enhancement from the training that is currently being undertaken. However, they do have serious health effects and they are illegal and they are also banned in all sports under the WADA code. In summary, it's important that you know the difference between a concentric and an eccentric muscle contraction, and you know which one is going to provide the muscle growth and which one is going to provide the performance benefits. And this is really important when you're designing a resistance training program or your goal is to put on muscle size via hypertrophy. It's also important to have an adequate diet, good nutrition, sufficient proteins in particular, as well as your fats and amino acids to make sure that you do have that positive energy balance at the end of the day and you've got enough energy left over to build new muscle and build new tissue. And although there are many positives of muscle development and muscle growth, it is important that the young males in particular know that or that are aware of muscle dysmorphia and they realise the symptoms and where they may need to seek medical treatment if they are displaying a lot of those symptoms. So they need to know that how severe it can be. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do have any questions, please feel free to leave some comments just below the video. Thank you.